the Ducati ST4. Welcome to Hacker Week. Well, on my way home the other day, enjoying a nice day out on the bike coming home from work. I'm ripping along on the freeway and wound it up a little bit, and all of a sudden, no go, just died, lost all power. And of course, first thing I thought was probably that fuel line in the tank again. So I pulled over, cranked it. Yeah, nothing. So I did a little further investigating by opening up the fuel cap. You turn the key on and the fuel pump runs. It's inside the tank and you can hear the fuel pump run, and if you have the cap up and you listen, if the line fell off, you can hear the gas in there just splashing around, squirting around. So I know that's what happened. The good news is, when this happened to me on the road a few months ago, that's another video, I did a roadside repair, and the O-ring on the bottom that seals the entire assembly for the fuel pump was a real pain in the ass to get back in. I ended up wrapping it with some 3M electrical tape. It stayed sealed, no leaks so far, but I've got another O-ring. I've got some gas line that's rated to be immersible in gasoline. Very important to use that kind of line. So fortunately, I've only got about maybe half a gallon or a gallon at the most of gas in here. So today what we're going to do is pull the tank and replace all that stuff, and I've got a fix for this so that it doesn't happen again. Let's get this tank off. First thing we got to do is pull this cover off. There's two 6mm bolts. There's a 4mm Allen head on these. We'll pull these off. All the background noise, by the way, is the AC unit running here in the garage because it's 98 degrees here today in North Carolina with a crap load of humidity. Now that we have that out of the way, we pull the strap that holds everything down here. The seat comes off with the key in the back. Now the tank is free to lift up here on the front, but you need to take this pin off back here. This pin runs right through here. There's a little clip that holds that pin in place. So let's pull that clip out of the way first. Grab that washer, make sure we don't lose that. We'll leave the pin in there for now. Now we can lift the tank up, prop it up on its little support right here. We need to disconnect the connector for the fuel pump and the fuel sending unit. That's right there. There's a overflow drain line that goes on there. That comes off. The fuel lines come out the bottom right here, and one of these is gonna leak because that fuel line internally is off. So what's gonna happen is one of these is just gonna be dumping gas when I pull this off. So what I'm going to do is get a piece of fuel line ready ahead of time to put on there, and I'll pinch that off with some needle nose vice grips. There we go. Is this going to be the one? Yeah, that's the one. It's the outlet line. So if you pull that line off and it's leaking like that, you know that the line is off internally. Now I can take this other line off. This one is probably not going to dump fuel because it's the inlet line. Put that tank back down and pull the pin in the back. Then we can lift the tank right off. Okay. We'll just lay it here on its back. Let's get this fuel line off, the one I put on there temporary. And we'll remove these 3 nuts that hold it in place. 13mm socket does the trick there. I will use a screwdriver, flat blade screwdriver, and get under the edge of this and Just start to gently pry it up. It should come up pretty easy. As you'll recall, I lubricated this out on the road in my roadside repair with a stick of deodorant. Let's see how my tape job held up. Not bad, still all there. Let's get that out of the way first. And you can't pull this all the way out of here because this line holds it in. And this line runs up to the top. So if you overfill the fuel, it runs through that line, out this outlet, and then on that line that I pulled off, goes out the bottom of the bike onto the road. So let's get this hose clamp off and take that line off. There's a connector right there that goes to this outside connector, and that's the one that goes to the fuel sending unit. So let's get that disconnected and try to keep that outside here. Let's go to the other side now. There's another line here. That's the breather line. That would go right here to the evaporative canister, the charcoal canister, and its job is to collect fumes and run them through the charcoal canister. So this is it. That's the whole assembly right there. And right there is the culprit. This line is the one that fell off. So this is where the problem is. This is supposed to go right there. And if you notice, there's not any kind of a flange to speak of on that nipple. So I've got a fix for that we'll get to after we replace these lines. There's my fuel line, there's my O-ring that seals this. So we've got two pieces that we need to replace. This piece and the piece right here. Now, these are held on with just spring clamps. I think I'm going to replace those with some regular hose clamps. So let's get all this taken apart first. Let's get that O-ring off, that old O-ring. Bye-bye. That thing was a giant pain in the ass out on the road to get back on. God, I thought I'd never get it. I really detest these spring clamps. Freaking hate them. Okay, let's keep that clamp. We'll put that aside. This would be a good time to change this filter, but I know that the filter was changed not too long before I got the bike, so I'm not going to bother with it. Get this hose clamp off. This one, I'm going to mark this just so I know which way it goes. Just take a Sharpie and go like that, put an arrow on it, just so I remember the direction that it's supposed to flow in. So this is the hose I bought. It's submersible fuel line, it says so right there, for fuel injection. So let's cut a piece. Same length. Make sure you push it on all the way. We'll put a clamp on it. I like to use a nut driver on the clamps instead of a screwdriver. It's much easier. A screwdriver likes to slip a lot, whereas a nut driver gets it on there good. My rule of thumb with these, when you clamp them down on hose, is to look at the small slits that are in it. You tighten it down until you see the rubber just kind of starting to squish into those slits a little, and you're good. Or as the Brits say, Bob's your uncle. So let's put a hose clamp on there. And we're gonna put this back onto this piece. I'm gonna give myself a little bit of help here. That's a pretty large nipple. And put a tiny bit of some silicone lube on there, just to kind of help me along in pushing that on. I want it to get all the way on, all the way bottomed out. Tighten that one down all the way. You can see there's a pretty fair amount of a tail left over. I can just cut that off, actually. Take some tin snips. I can snip away that extra tail I don't really need. Now this is a metal filter aftermarket, and you can see it's a little smaller than what the original was. The original was intended to be clamped into place with this plastic clamp, and there's a small Allen bolt there that clamps it into place. So I'm going to see if I can find some pieces of rubber around here to shim it up and actually clamp that thing in place so it doesn't rattle around as much. That will help a little bit. For the rubber around here, I need something that I know is going to be okay in gasoline. I've got the old line left over that I pulled off. I think what I'll do is see if I can use this. Just take a razor knife and slit this so that it'll lay flat, like so, and wrap it around there. See how that works out. Okay, I cut it down considerably and probably take a little more off from it. Now let's see what we can do to get this whole mess back together. I'm just going to have to kind of push it in as I go, like so. Yeah, that's working. Let's see how that sits. Not so bad. Down past the lip. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I can put my nut and bolt back in there. Tighten that up. Okay, now I can do this line. I'm just going to put the full length of hose on the fuel filter first. Tighten up that hose clamp. Now I can put this in such a way where I can get a nice clean curve on there. That looks good. I like that. So let's cut it right there. Clamp on. And we shove it onto the fuel pump. Push it on until it bottoms all the way out. It sure goes on there hard, but it sure comes off easy. Let's put the clamp on. And tighten that up. Make sure you get the clamp down below what little bit of a bulge there is in that nipple. And tighten this up really good. There we go. New fuel lines installed. Now for the part that's going to keep this from coming off again. We're going to safety wire that line. I've got some 19 gauge galvanized steel wire. What I'm going to do is go right around the hose clamp and the hose, and
then I'm going to come down here and drill a small hole right here in this little bit of aluminum. Won't hurt a thing, just a tiny hole right through there. It's a place to run the wire to, and then we'll run it back up here and twist it up and safety wire it. Just a little extra insurance to make sure that that doesn't come off again. Okay, let's see if we can drill a little hole right through this flangey thing. There we go. Now let's get all that crap blown out of there. There we go. We got a nice tiny little hole right there. Now let's go right around the hose. I'm going to leave a pretty long tail, and I'm going to twist this up. Not too tight, don't want to cut into the hose. I've got safety wire pliers, but they're in the toolbox at work. They're really cool. You clamp them on, you hold them, and then you pull, and they twist. You wind up the wire. But we can do it like this with some vice grips. We're just going to twist until that twisty spot works its way back to the hose right there, and we're going to stop. Now we're going to bend that down. Take this longer piece of the tail, I'm going to run it through that little hole I did. Now this is where we're going to pull it tight. Make sure it's pulled up good and tight. And let's cut off some of this excess, some of that excess. We'll take these two pieces. Now we're going to twist those up. Cut this off. Take some needle nose pliers. We're going to bend this around. Go right down underneath both pieces of wire. Come back up. And give it a little pinch. Just like that. There we go. A little insurance to make sure that line stays in place. I don't think I'm going to have an issue over on this one because there's a fairly good sized bulge on the fuel filter nipple, so I don't think that's going to come off. Okay, so see, this is under pressure. That's the problem, is that this vibrates, it's under pressure. This was wiggling around, that wasn't good. So we've kind of added two things that are going to really help the situation here, I think. Let's get all this cleaned up, get the new O-ring on, and put it all back together. Got some denatured alcohol and a rag. I'm going to use that to clean off all of that leftover black adhesive stuff from my electrical tape job that I did. I was actually quite proud of myself for pulling that off out there on the road with what I had in hand. That was crazy. What a day that was. But I managed to fix it and still enjoy the rest of my weekend. Okay. Time for the O-ring. Let's just see how much difference there is in size here. There's the old one and the new one. Considerably stretched out. You see how much difference there is right there in the end? Yeah, that thing's junk. I really think that ethanol gas was to blame for that. As soon as it got soaked with gas, it was game over. This O-ring fits nice and tight all the way around. But what I'm going to do is still put a little bit of silicone lube on it when we go back together, just to help it out. Smear a little bit around the whole thing here. Plus the silicone is actually good for rubber. We're ready to put this back in. Before I assemble any of this, some lube on the inside of the tank here as well. Just to help that whole thing go together a little easier. I don't want to pinch that O-ring. Ruining a brand new O-ring would just not make my day. And I've heard that this is just a really common pain in the ass thing with the Ducatis, putting these back together. And I can attest it is indeed a big pain in the ass thing. Alright, let's do this thing. So the lines go toward the back of the tank. First thing we'll do is connect up the fuel sending unit wire, which I just dropped back into the gas again, because, you know, the gasoline gods want me to get my hands in that shit. Alright, let's clip together. Go down into the tank. And this line goes right there. Push it on all the way. Tighten up that clamp. Around to the other side. Fish this line out of here. It goes here. Down all the way and tighten that one up. So as I discovered out on the road, you need to push on this. Wedging it up against something certainly helps a lot. And make sure the O-ring is right where it needs to be. And let's just see what we get. Just gonna try pushing it into place. And the trick is to go even all the way around. Now the nuts actually have an extension on them, so that you can supposedly get them started, and then that's what helps pull it down evenly. But if they were just a little longer, sure would be nice. So I'm going to put the one on this side, push down on this. You know, I don't like it when one side goes in and the other one didn't. Okay, let's just see what we got. Let's put that one in. Got to rotate just a bit. Okay, that one is started. Now before I just go slamming it down and assuming everything's okay, I want to pinch the O-ring. So I'm going to take a look underneath and see what's going on, if that O-ring is hanging up anywhere or not. So far so good. Looks pretty good. Take a peek on this side. Looks good there too. I don't see the O-ring pinching anywhere. Real paranoid about it because, you know, last time out on the road I actually pinched the O-ring and I thought I was pretty well screwed. It split it. It actually split the O-ring. This seems to be going in so much easier. And the other indicator is there's gas coming out of the vent breather, which means that as I'm pushing in, I'm pressurizing the tank a little. because it's displacing air. So because of that, I'm getting this little bit of fuel coming out through the canister purge vent. All right, I think we've got it. Okay, let's get all this extra gas soaked up. Tip the tank back up so it quits doing that. Oh, hello. I'm going to open up the gas cap just to vent everything here real quick and close it back up. I think we're good. The final test before it goes back on the bike is to just set it up right on the bench and look for any leaks, and I don't see any. When I was out on the road and I did this and I tipped it back up, I had gas dripping out all over the place, but it looks like I'm okay. No leaky. Good. Okay, so you know, like all those user manuals say, installation is the reverse of the previous procedure. All right, everything's hooked back up. Haven't got the fuel tank all the way bolted down yet. Because if you put everything back together after you do a repair, the repair gods go, oh yeah? Well, since you've got everything back together, now we're just going to screw everything up and make you realize you missed something. So I got this thing where I don't put everything all the way back together until I test fire stuff. I do this on cars and stuff too, timing belts. Go ahead and fire it up before you put the cover back on. Anyway, here we go. Let's turn the key a couple times just to prime that pump. Get the fuel lines purged of air. There we go. Should fire right off. There we go. Luciana is happy again. And of course, it's always a good idea to take a good look for leaks anywhere. When you put something back together that has to do with fuel, I don't see any drips. I don't see anything going on. So now I'll go ahead and get the cover back on, get the seat back on, and go take a ride and get some lunch somewhere. There you have it. Another little fix on the Ducati. You know, people say Ducatis are unreliable. I don't think it's so much that it's like unreliable in the sense of it's going to keep breaking down as it is. There's little things that you can fix to make it more reliable. Yeah, and so that's what I just did. That little safety wire thing should take care of any issues with that fuel line coming off in the future. And once you get to know the bike, like the other day when it happened, I knew immediately what was going on. It was the fuel line. So I didn't try to troubleshoot, didn't do a bunch of shit. I just kind of coasted a half mile down the road, pushed it about a quarter mile, and parked it at the fire station down in Southern Pines. Called my wife, said, hey, come on down with the Santa Fe. Let's go get the motorcycle trailer from the shop, come back up, pick up the bike, go home, then we'll go out to dinner. So that's what we did. And here today we fixed it. I've been putting that off for a while, and it kind of snuck up and bit me in the ass by failing out on the road. Just glad it wasn't way out on the road somewhere and it was in town. But overall, I'm really happy with the Ducati. I love this bike. It's just got so much grunt. It's got a great sound. It's fun to ride. Much lighter than the BMW, at least 100 pounds lighter, maybe more. And oh, then there's this project over here that we're still going on. The old CB360T Scrambled Egg Edition, the Scrambler. It's coming along pretty good, and there's going to be another video coming up real soon because I've got some more stuff to put on this bike. I've got new head bearings. I got a whole new triple tree from a 82, I think it's written on here actually what it's from. It's yeah, from an 82 CB450T, which had 33 millimeter diameter fork tubes on it. And I've got a All Balls Racing head bearing set to put on there. Also some stuff on the rear that I modded, and we'll get to that in the next video on that machine. I hope to have that thing running before the end of summer, because it'll be fun. There's a really neat dirt bike park near here that I'm going to take it out and do some dirt testing with when the time comes. But anyway, I guess that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for sharing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time. We're gonna safety wire that line.